So, I'll admit, this is a weird one. I'll immediately tell you that if you're here to watch me rip into the universally disliked Joker 2 fully dumb, great joke, that's not what this video is about. As soon as I heard that Joker 2 was a courtroom drama musical, and I saw all the people calling their watch an awful experience, I decided that maybe I don't need to see every movie that comes out. But what I also noticed was a great amount of complaints about the sequel's deviation from the original film's tone and plotline. Plus, I remembered how much film fans have turned on the original Joker ever since its release, and subsequent oversaturation. This movie got memed so much that it feels weird to make an actually serious, normal review of it without any society jokes or anything. When I first watched this movie in 2020, I was confused and unsure of my opinion. As I typically was in my early reviewing days, I was a small, strange child. Cut me some slack. But what that usually means is that the movie was either really bad, and I didn't feel confident enough to call it that, or really good, and I just didn't understand the vision or context. Therefore, I need a rewatch. Was this movie's fall a result of that damned 6-month turn that film Twitter loves to pull on so many popular movies, or is it actually flawed in too many ways to ignore? And ultimately, is it good or bad? Well, the answers to those questions are a little bit of both, and so you know this will be a weird review. Spoilers ahead if you somehow don't already know the story of this movie. I think the easiest way to start is by naming the most obvious positive of this movie. You know him, you love him, it's Joaquin Phoenix. I could say he was made for this role, but it feels more like this role was made for him. If you know anything about old Joaquin, you know about his tendency to play loserish, mentally impaired cowards. He's so good at it that it kind of makes me want to beat him up. Like in Beau is Afraid, Phoenix is such a lame pushover that it actually circled back around to being kind of a negative for me because of how well he portrays it. I've never seen someone try on purpose to have a punchable face. I know this sounds like a negative, but trust me, for this interpretation of the Joker, it's perfect. Arthur needs to be both an underdog and a creep. Joaquin Phoenix's mannerisms work for both. He seems well-intentioned in the first act, and he gets beat up a lot, which is the easiest way to make one care for a character, but he's also horribly uncomfortable to watch, and lacking a lot of self-awareness. He simply is a puzzle piece that does not fit. When it comes to the further writing of this character, there are definitely issues, but we'll save those for later. For now, I would like to just compliment the performance. Even the weight loss contributes. Any shot of Arthur's bony-ass spine is disgusting in an actually novel way. I'd also compliment Phoenix's comedic chops. Considering the movie isn't very funny overall, even when it wants to be, it's nice that there are still a few laughs. I both love when Arthur jump scares Gary when he's trying to escape for no reason, and all of the times that he says Murray. All in all, great lead performance. Now, I'm going to completely flip the script. The worst aspect of this movie is the writing, and this is unsurprisingly where a lot of the hate comes from. I think it's unfair that some people seem to look at the bad writing and use it as an excuse to forget all of the good qualities this movie has, but it does hinder nearly every one of them. Joaquin Phoenix is great. Arthur Fleck is subpar. The easiest critique is the surface-level commentary on insanity and mental illness. I was ready to type "this is as subtle as someone doing the shooting yourself motion unironically" before the shooting yourself motion showed up, and then they did it again like 3 more times. You get shots of Arthur writing mental illness in his notebook, him saying out loud that he isn't happy, which is only helped along by Joaquin Phoenix again, and the most egregiously funny example, which is when Arthur gets pissed off at his friends and runs out the door, crossing out part of the "don't forget to smile" sign, so it just says "don't smile." Come the fuck on. Plus, the entire love interest subplot sucks ass. Zazie Beetz is completely wasted, having not a single interesting line throughout her entire plotline, and then you find out she's not even a real character, and then she never shows up again. Not only does this create so many logical inconsistencies that I guess just don't matter now that the climax is arriving, but they also completely failed to give Sophie, that's her name by the way, a role in the story. She's obviously just a part of Arthur, but which part? In all of her scenes, she is simply regurgitating his beliefs back at him. If she was either the devil or angel on his shoulder, there would be a purpose, but since he's already stating most of his motivations out loud, you don't need another character doing the same thing with no adjustment. Plus, the twist is just so pointless. It devalues a character for the sake of stressing once again that Arthur is crazy. I get it, movie. There's also the whole Thomas Wayne bullshit, but I don't even want to get into that. We'll return to the writing issues later because there is more. A few smaller compliments I have for the movie are surrounding the technical aspects, most specifically the cinematography. This movie is obviously trying to be 80s, and I can already hear you screaming, King of Comedy, Taxi Driver, and yes, it is similar. But I've always been of the belief that blending inspirations to create your own interpretation is far from straight-up plagiarism. You can make critiques of the script for following too similar of a plotline, but when it comes to the appearance of the movie, while it may be inspired, it doesn't feel out of place. This darkly lit aesthetic is what this movie actually needed. It manages to be run down without feeling colorless. There's actually some really appealing camera work, from Arthur's awkward chase scenes to his mental breakdown moments. And putting an accent on those scenes is the music. I would argue that the oldies songs for the soundtrack is pretty inappropriate inspiration in comparison to the look and feel of the movie, but the score, on the other hand, is what's bringing most of the drama for me. It's by a man with a name that I am not even going to try to pronounce, so I instead encourage you to look it up. The main theme is very atmospheric for a sleepless night, and is used consistently, but not enough that it becomes annoying. From a technical standpoint, I would say Joker is more good than bad. And minor annoyances for me would include most of the comedy of the movie. I have to say, when it comes to comedy, you would expect comedians to be the highlight, but no. I weirdly feel that all the jokes written to be performed by comedians that the movie wants to present as actually good at their job almost never land for me, and that's an awkward thing when they're supposed to look very professional. It's mostly just my bitch of an ex-wife type jokes, even for Murray. That's not an insult to Mr. Robert De Niro. I love you, Mr. De Niro. Please sign my copy of Goodfellas, but it was just hard to ignore how stale the jokes were. The only one I really liked was when Murray calls out Arthur for having to look up knock knock in his book. That was a good bit. Okay, but now we have to get back to the writing, because the end of the movie contains a lot of script issues that I cannot get behind. And I'm talking like falling action and resolution. The climax is mostly solid, in my opinion. I understand that this is meant to be the Joker movie, but if you take into consideration Arthur's role in the story, it seems very strange that he is presented in a glorified martyr-like fashion by the end. Presenting Arthur as a symbol of resistance is not going to help anything, and clearly it didn't, because then people shot up theaters. In Taxi Driver and King of Comedy, Scorsese manages to balance satirizing the evil of big city life towards the little guy, without ignoring the blatant immorality of his leads. Arthur becoming a symbol should be treated less like a celebration and more like a horror. People like Arthur actually get in the way of real rebellion, since violent acts will then be expected of peaceful protesters. I feel that this movie knows that Arthur is a psycho, an incel, and a creep, but they're just too scared to not back him, as he is the face of the movie. It is possible to acknowledge that Arthur had some valid points about the system of oppression in today's world, while not uplifting people like him. But he did do a funny dance, so all is forgiven. And can't we talk about how weird that dance scene is? It's one of the most iconic scenes of the movie, but it comes out of nowhere. And then the cop characters show up after enough time for me to literally forget they were in the movie. The score randomly changes completely, and then Arthur runs off like a loser. What a strange scene. So clearly, I have a lot of issues with the writing of Joker, but there are good pieces at play, and I would be amiss to not acknowledge them. Overall, I can't say this movie is bad, it's just misconstrued and very surface level. With these building blocks, Joker could unironically have been a modern masterpiece, and I'm not saying that as a joke. All these negatives stem from this movie's fear to challenge its audience, surface level critique of both societal issues and its main character, because it wants to be as understandable as possible, tossing the themes of mental illness right in front of you because it wants to be a big box office success. Joker ultimately seems like it's doomed because it is Joker. I don't really think this movie knows what it wants to be beyond those building blocks. Factoring in pros and cons though, it's about a 6 out of 10. There are valid critiques from the film community for sure, but I think they've stretched things a bit too far, calling this movie a disgrace to cinema or something like that. It's just not all it's cracked up to be. And I'm still not going to see Joker 2. Bye now.